Hello, welcome back to the final part of our powerful conversation with Catherine Pascoe on Leading Our Own Way here on the YouTube channel. If you don't already subscribe, please do so. But in this concluding segment with Catherine, we reflect on her complete journey, her complete transformation, where she shares wisdom about self-acceptance, effective communication, and the importance of being unapologetically yourself. Her story reminds us that our past experiences don't define our future, but can empower us to create meaningful change. Anyway, if you've missed the other parts, please go back and watch part 1 to 4. That's on the playlist. Make sure you go and press the playlist button. It should be just around here somewhere. And come back next week. Come back for another inspiring guest here on Leading Our Own Way. Can't wait to share more powerful journeys with you all. Thanks for following and supporting the show. We keep on growing every time. Have a great weekend. Keep leading your own way. But here's Catherine. So were you happy as a child then, despite being bullied frequently?
I was actually happy, but under the circumstances, I cried most days. So I have a very close bond with my brother, and he always had a very special way of snapping me out of it. He has a very interesting mind, my brother. Very, very clever, very quirky, very gentle. And I was very blessed to grow up with someone like him and have his mind. I'm still yet to beat him in a game of chess. So he's very, very intelligent that way. So, but when it comes to the hardship when you're a child, like, I don't know, when you're a child and you're observing your parents and you're living in an environment, it's interesting the baggage that you create from that. And it's only small. It's a small bag. It's something that you carry along. It's like carry-on luggage.
What was the bag that you were carrying then?
So what was in the bag that I was carrying from my observation, because when you're a child, because I'm not a mother myself, so I can only come from the child's perspective. When I open my baggage, walking into a relationship as a young adolescent to a boy that smiled at me, big deal. I don't know who this boy is, but I'm committed to him. Now that might seem very simplistic, but you're committed to someone who you don't know. And then you learn to know who they are, and then you start to not like certain aspects about them, but you don't know what you want when you're walking into a relationship because you're not given those tools. You're not taught that. So, and that's no fault of any parent or anything. That's just, you walk into a relationship and you don't know that when you're angry with something, there's a difference between being angry with the person and being angry with the situation, and they're two separate things altogether. Now, when you're heightened and when you're upset with something that's happened, whether it's trivial or whether it's something really like what happened to me in my relationship, you're very heightened and you're very upset. And then to try and separate the frustration between the person and the situation, when you've learnt that as baggage and you open up all the knowledge that you know from your child or from your childhood, and you go, well, how am I supposed to learn how to argue with someone? And when you're climbing to the top, when you're climbing to the top through the argument, you're trying to win. Whether it's through aggression, whether it's through a sharp tongue, whether it's through insulting, whether it's through anything like that, whatever you've observed in your childhood, you're trying to beat the person down so you're winning and you're standing at the top. So you've reached the top of that mountain, and what are you going to do? You're going to look around and you're lonely. Because ultimately, you've hurt the person that you're supposed to love. Why do you purposely hurt the person that you're meant to love? And it's all of these things that I have learnt through observation, and that I've now brought into the way that I address things, is that if you're going to argue with someone, you need to understand how to argue with them. And now, my mother did say that to me when I was younger, and I was very blessed to have my mother, because she always gave me her time And she always sat with me for as long as she needed to, for hours and hours and hours on end. And it felt amazing to be able to converse with such a beautiful mind of hers. So, but she did say to me, you've got to learn how to argue, but she didn't explain how. I had to learn my own way. And you're never going to fully align with someone every single day, and that's completely fine. The paths that you walk along in a long-term relationship might split apart, but you're always going to come back together. But it's depending on the outlook that you're working as a team. Now, if you work as a team together, whether it's a friendship, whether it's a relationship, or whether it's someone in your family, if you work as a team to understand with curiosity instead of trying to beat them down and win the argument, because that's all you've observed or that's all you know, and that's in your little bag of baggage that you pull along. It really just depends on how you want to address that. Do you want to win the argument, or is the relationship more important than winning the argument? And that's what you've got to ask. So understanding why they're angry, and especially, when it comes to understanding people who are in your corner and people who are in your business, if you find out that people are talking about you behind your back, if you find out that someone's angry with you and they don't address it with you, to you directly, what are they angry at? What are they actually angry at? And are they able to talk it through with you? Are they able to discuss what's going on? Are they able to address it with, okay, the solution that we want at the end? Why are we having this conversation? I don't want to have an argument with you. I want to have a conversation, and I want to fully understand what you want out of this. Do you want a solution-based conversation, and what does that look like? Because at the end of this, I want to feel good about this because I care about you. I want you to be part of my life, but I don't want this to continue. I don't want this argument to continue. And it's, addressing someone that you've had a problem with, or that you, like, say in a relationship, in my past relationship, addressing him going, I actually want to have a conversation with you so I can understand what's going on so it doesn't happen again. So you're not pushing them into the corner and trying to beat them down and say, I don't want you to do that again, where you're actually conversing on an empathetic level, on a balanced level, going, I want to understand you. I want to understand why this keeps happening, and I want to come up with a solution so it stops happening, that we can work together as a team. It's not me against you and vice versa. But that is something as a child that you're not taught. And then you walk into a relationship and then you just repeat what you've seen.
I mean, well, let's touch on well, you said about a relationship with your mother. Did you have the same relationship with your father? Because everything you've just said there, you can go off how you saw your mother and father as well. So you've painted the picture of you and your mother, about you and your father, and then maybe your mother and father, if that makes sense.
So my mother and father, I witnessed, my dad swooping my mum down, lovingly kiss her, and she was in hysterics when she was at the kitchen sink washing the dishes. It felt like we were in the way of their love affair in many ways.
That's cute.
And he absolutely adored her. And he still talks about her with a lot of honor. And
are they together still?
They're still together.
Yeah, wow, good.
My mother's got cancer. And I asked her, because she actually... she wasn't able to converse properly for a while based on her medication that was being given to her. So there was swap and change with chemo medication and whatnot. So she was able to speak again. So I thought, this is an opportunity to ask those questions, because I always loved having long conversations with her. And for 6 months, I wasn't able to get a conversation out of her. Her eyes were showing me that she wanted to talk, but she couldn't speak. So I had the opportunity to ask her. I've gone, Mum, have you always loved Dad? And they've been together now 48 years this year. Well, married 48 years this year. And she said, no, I haven't always loved him. I go, okay. She was
Dad,
very
don't listen to this
honest.
episode.
And then I said to her, but how do you feel about him now? And she's gone, it's like a brand new love that I have for him. And I said, why is that, Mum? And she's gone, because he's taking care of me. And that's very interesting because, statistically, people leave their partners when they're sick. but he's stayed by her. She's
Because he
his
loves her.
sweetheart, and you see that.
Yeah.
Some of my greatest memories that I remember feeling as a childhood was being in hysterics of laughter with my family, with my dad. My dad's got a wicked sense of humor. I've not met someone else that can actually make me laugh the way that he does. But there's also, the ups and downs, because we used to fight a lot. But there was also a lot of respect there, but there was also a lot of ups and downs. So, it takes a lot to hold the badge of, I don't like him, because I just don't like him. Because you're a teenager and you look at them going, I've got a problem with the way that you demand respect, but you're not acting respectable. And you start having all of these reels go through your head, and, this is who he is and this is who I am, and I just don't like it. And then you have the silence of 6 years and you're not speaking to them because of your partner. And then you go back through all of the times that really mean the most. And it was in that silence and it was in that distance where I really started to respect who he was, who he is. And there's no longer that axe hanging above the head of, well, I don't like him. I don't actually like who he is. No, that's only hurting myself. Because if you think about it, if I was to put myself in his situation and have a teenager living with me, giving me attitude, I don't know how I would have handled that. My dad handled things the best he could. And he did the best he could knowing what he did. And that's all what parents are. They're learning as they go.
I am.
And
I'm
who am I
guessing
to
constantly.
judge that? Yeah, that's right. I'm looking at it from the child's point of view, going, my dad did the best he could. And who am I to judge that? And he's a really good man for doing that. And I actually honor him a lot
That's good.
for the effort that he put in and for the honor that he did for our family. So that's how I feel about him now. But obviously growing up with an environment that you don't learn how to converse in a way without it being heightened, without it being the loudest one wins. The most aggressive one has the most valid point.
Sure. Yeah.
And it's very it takes a lot to break that down and go back to basics with, well, actually, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to behave that way. I'm not going to do that. And there's nothing wrong with having that as an experience, because it's what you do. You take accountability for going, that's an environment that I know. That's an environment that I understand, but that's not going to define me and that's not going to control me. It's like the emotion is controlling you and you're not in the driver's seat. And then all of a sudden you're allowing things to affect you the way that they do, instead of actually sitting in it and going, I've been in this environment before. They're trying to push my buttons to get a reaction out of me, and they're going to talk about the reaction instead of taking accountability for what they've done.
Oh yeah, I've been there before. It's like you've got to work on I worked on taking the emotion out of the memory, because then the memory became wisdom.
Yes.
Once I'd conquered that, and occasionally the emotion I found creep back in because I talk about it more now with the podcast and so on. But yeah, I think I've done pretty well with that.
Yeah.
I feel like we could definitely have another another episode to your powerful journey. Before I come to my 3 final questions, Catherine, is there anything that we've missed from your childhood? Is there anything that you think we have missed that is something that we need to share in this moment before I go to the 3 final questions?
I mean, there's a lot of layers, and I
Of
think
course.
that if I was to open that up, I would literally be sitting here for another couple of hours, and we'd be like, all right, we need to.
Well, we'll do it again in the future. That's fine. That's not a problem.
I think we need to just do a take 2 of the different layer, because there is so much to the story, and I feel like we've just literally just gone through like 0.1% of everything that I've got to share here. So,
and I sense that too, for sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
And we'll come back to it. And I think with other parts of your journey, we'll become clearer by that point as well, which will probably be able to tie that up a lot neater as well, wouldn't it? I guess.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it would be a pleasure to continue to talk about this because yeah, I've hardly even touched the surface with this.
Well, we will. Maybe you'll have to go and write it down as well.
Yeah.
That'll be
Yeah,
powerful.
definitely.
And I always advise that people, that's a very powerful thing to do, is to write everything down. I used to be like, I'm not doing that. I'm not, I'm too manly to do that. I'm not going to write it down. But when I wrote the book, it was the most powerful thing because my journey is in the book. It's not a book of the journey, but my journey is within a chapter of it where I share other people's journeys in it. Probably the very small stem cell that grew the podcast idea, to be honest. Okay, then. So, if there's a piece of advice, and then you've actually done this quite a lot, but if there's any piece of advice for those people who are going through something very similar, because you're not alone. This is one thing I've learned is meeting people, and when we open our journeys up to the world, they all come crawling out. The journey comes crawling out of millions of people. So there's somebody right now sat at a stage that you were at, or still sat at the same stage you're at right now, or they're about to embark into it, which is something we want to prevent from happening. What piece of advice could you give as best as you possibly can to the generic topic of what you've been through?
Be unapologetically you and own it. Because one thing I learned about playing Tetris is if you try and fit in, you disappear. And that comes through what experience you've gone through, whether it's remembering, observing, or imagining. You need to be yourself. And what you're feeling is completely natural. What you're worried about is valid. And you do matter, and you're not a burden. So reach out to your friends that you trust. Not too many of them because you don't want too many spot fires that become a bushfire, but reach out to your friends that you trust and then start putting a plan in place. Beautiful.
Love it. Future plans. The reason why I ask this question is because I want people to understand, just because we're on the podcast talking about the station we're sat at right now of the train journey, let's say, it never ends. It never ends until the point we leave this earth. What are the future plans for Catherine? I know you mentioned before about your professional sense and the purpose and where you're taking it, but maybe on a personal level, what are the future plans for you as a whole?
A personal level, I want to continue doing what I'm doing, and I feel very comfortable and very happy with what I'm doing right now. I feel that when I talk to people about what I've been through and that they can empathize in some sort of way, it's like sharing a candle with them. So you're sharing something quite powerful, and it only gains healing through that. They're not diminishing my light or vice versa. And I enjoy doing that for people. I enjoy being an advocate. I enjoy empowering women and men that are going through this. So it's definitely something that I want to continue doing.
Beautiful. Yeah, perfect. All right. Usually becomes very clear in the episode, but I always ask the guest to put the answer to this question to a very simple line. What's your purpose?
To get the message out.
About
empowerment.
I like that. Yeah, super important. Super important. Well, Catherine, I think we're probably going to meet in a few months to go through the rest of your journey. It'll be an open mic night to you, I think, that one. Thanks for joining me and sharing your vulnerability. It's even just that in itself, hopefully will create a safe space for everybody else to open up about their journey. And what I've noticed in the podcast is as soon as we open about our individual journey and empower our journey and see the power in our journey, we can then change put a small step into the change in the trajectory of our lives. So thanks for doing that, Catherine. I really appreciate it. I know someone out there will take a lot from your insights tonight, and I can't wait for part 2 so we can get a little bit deeper with your journey.
Yeah, no, I look forward to that as well. Thank you. It's been an honor.
No, the honour's all mine, Catherine. I know we'll keep talking, and maybe we'll lash out some ideas for the next part. But thank you for joining me on Leading Our Own Way. You're certainly doing that, so keep doing that. But to everybody else, keep coming back next week as you always do for another inspiring guest. Until next week, from Catherine and myself, have a great weekend and keep leading your own way. Take care. Thanks for listening and watching Leading Our Own Way. So we can stay together forever and share more incredible journeys, please subscribe to the channel. That way you won't miss next week's episode and what that amazing guest has to offer to the world. Please support Leading Our Own Way, and we'll get you on next week's episode.